What would you do if the snow tried to bury not just a life, but your own heart with it? The storm had rolled in from the Montana highlands before sunrise, a wall of white swallowing every ridge, every fence post, every sound. The whole world seemed to shrink under it. Daniel Mercer stood at the edge of his porch, coat zipped to the throat, boots braced against the wind. He had slept little again. He rarely did these days. Too many memories kept drifting in, memories he tried to keep locked away, but never fully could. He had been alone on the ranch since last spring, since the fever took Emily and left the house too quiet. Some mornings he woke thinking he heard her humming in the kitchen, only to remember she was gone. He did not ride much in storms anymore, but something pressed at him today, something sharp and restless, a feeling deep in his chest that refused to settle. He saddled Iron, the old chestnut gelding, and rode toward the west pasture. The snow was deep, up to the horse's belly in some places, and the wind cut across his face like a blade dipped in ice. Daniel leaned forward, narrowing his eyes at the swirling white. Fence posts appeared and vanished again like ghosts stepping in and out of the storm. It was close to noon when he saw it. At first, he thought it was nothing more than a broken branch. Then Iron gave a low grunt and slowed. Daniel squinted. A shape, small and huddled, half buried beneath a drift, not moving. Not quite human looking under all that snow, but something in it made his heart kick against his ribs. He dismounted fast, boots sinking deep. The wind screamed around him. He brushed away the top layer of snow, and his breath caught. It was a woman. Her face was pale, lips blue, lashes frozen shut. Her hair, dark, tangled, was stiff with ice. One arm lay out as if she had reached for something just before she fell. Her coat was torn at the shoulder, her gloves thin as paper. She looked fragile, like one more gust of wind could carry her away. Daniel pressed 2 fingers to her neck. At first he felt nothing. A cold panic rose in him. Then, faint as a small flutter, a pulse trembled under his touch. He let out a long breath he had not realized he was holding. "You're alive," he said, his voice low in the storm. "Barely, but alive." He moved quickly. He pulled off his saddle blanket, wrapped her in it tight, secured it with his belt. Then he lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. A worry pressed at him. How long had she been out here? How had she survived this long? He laid her across Iron's back in front of the saddle, climbed up, held her steady with one arm, and turned for home. The ride felt twice as long going back. The wind grew stronger. Snow slapped their faces. Iron stumbled once, and Daniel's heart jumped. He held her closer, shielding her from the worst of the cold. "Stay with me," he muttered, though she could not hear him. "Just stay with me." When he reached the cabin, he almost fell off the horse from exhaustion. He carried her inside, kicked the door shut, and moved straight to the hearth. The fire was low, but still warm. He laid her on a pile of blankets, stripped off her wet coat, boots, and gloves with careful hands. Her skin felt like ice. He rushed to heat water, soaking cloths, rubbing warmth back into her arms and legs. He worked without stopping, steady and focused. Every now and then he whispered something without thinking, soft words, the kind he had once spoken to Emily in her last days. He didn't try to push them away, he just kept going. Hours passed. The storm raged outside, rattling the shutters. The fire glowed brighter, its warmth spreading slowly into her frozen body. Then she gasped. Her whole body jerked like someone had snapped a cord, pulling her back to life. Her eyes flew open, wide, wild, confused. She tried to push herself up, but her arms shook too much. Daniel caught her shoulders gently. "You're safe," he said. "You're in my cabin. You were buried in the snow." Her lips moved. No sound came out. "It's all right," Daniel said. "Don't try to talk yet." She blinked, staring at him like she wasn't sure if he was real. Her breathing came fast and shallow, like each breath hurt. He wrapped her tighter in a thick quilt, the one Emily used to stitch by lamplight. He placed a warm cup of broth near her, though she was still too weak to hold it. She lay back against the pillows, eyes half open, watching the fire. Watching him, not speaking, but alive. He sat by the hearth, elbows on his knees, watching the flames rise and fall. Snow hammered the roof. The storm kept howling. But for the first time in months, the cabin didn't feel empty. There was another heartbeat inside its walls. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. He only knew he had found her buried in the snow. And now she was here, breathing, fragile but alive. And for reasons he could not yet understand, something deep inside him, something long frozen, shifted just a little. He stayed awake through the night, watching over her, feeling the fire warm more than just the room. Something had begun. The storm quieted by morning, settling into a soft, steady fall that drifted like feathers from a torn pillow. The world outside the cabin lay still and white, but inside, the small room felt warmer than it had in nearly a year. Daniel set another log on the fire and checked the woman's breathing. She slept deeply, her face no longer blue at the lips, her skin no longer stiff with cold. Her hair had thawed, softening in dark waves across the pillow. She looked almost peaceful now, though too thin, too pale, like someone who had carried fear for far too long. Around mid-morning, she stirred. Daniel straightened from the stove where he had been warming broth. Her eyes blinked open slowly, like she had to fight her way up from some heavy place. She pushed herself up on her elbows. This time she didn't collapse. "You're awake," Daniel said gently. She looked at him, studying his face with wary uncertainty. Her voice when it came was rough, barely above a whisper. Where am I?" "You're at my ranch," he said. "About 10 miles from the ridge. I found you buried out west, near the old split cedar." She pressed a hand to her head and winced. I don't remember that." "That's all right," he said. "You don't need to remember everything yet." He brought the bowl of broth to her. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. He steadied the bowl until she managed to take a sip. The warmth seemed to travel through her whole body. She closed her eyes as if it was the first comfort she'd felt in a long time. "What's your name?" Daniel asked softly. She paused, the spoon halfway to her lips, her brows pulled together. "I don't know." Daniel kept his own face steady, even though the answer struck something in him. "You don't have to force it," he said. "Names come back when they're ready." She nodded slowly and finished the broth. When she handed the bowl back, her hand brushed his, and for a moment she looked startled by the warmth of another person. He rose, giving her space, and tended to the fire. She watched him quietly, her gaze moving around the cabin. The shelves of canned goods, the stacks of split wood, the quilt folded neatly over the rocker. Her eyes lingered on the row of books near the window, then on the picture frame turned face down beside them. Daniel followed her gaze, then reached over and nudged the frame farther from sight. "Storm's easing," he said, shifting the air in the room. "Road will clear in a few days." She swallowed. Will you send me on my way then?" Daniel turned to her. Her expression was calm, but something in her voice carried a tremble, a fear she tried to hide. "Only if that's what you want," he said. She looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of the quilt. "I don't know what I want. I don't know anything." "You know you're safe," Daniel said. "Start with that." Her shoulders loosened a little. A breath left her chest in a slow, unsteady sigh. "Safe," she whispered. "I'm not sure I've felt that in a long time." The words hit him harder than he let show. For the rest of the day, she rested near the fire. Daniel chopped wood, shoveled the steps, checked the barn. But every time he came back inside, she would glance up, as if making sure he returned, as if the cabin felt steadier with him in it. By afternoon, she gathered enough strength to stand. She moved through the room slowly, a hand trailing along the table for balance. Daniel helped her to the chair near the window. Snow drifted outside in quiet waves. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Sometimes," Daniel said. "Depends on the day." She gave a faint nod. "I dreamed last night." Daniel settled across from her. "What about?" She touched the side of her temple where faint bruising still lingered. "A road. Or maybe a trail, and a man calling out. I couldn't see him, but I think he knew me. Daniel leaned forward. Did it scare you? No, she said. It hurt. She looked at him then, something searching in her eyes. Why did you help me? Daniel thought of Emily, of the empty months after, of how he had moved through each day like a ghost in his own home. He thought of the small voice inside him that had pushed him out into the storm before dawn. It was the right thing to do, he said quietly. A silence stretched between them, warm rather than heavy, the kind that filled a room instead of emptying it. That night, a faint fever rose in her again, quick as a spark catching dry grass. She trembled under the blankets. Daniel sat beside her, soaked cloth in warm water, and laid it gently across her forehead. She didn't open her eyes, but she whispered something soft, something broken. Please, don't leave. Daniel froze. The words were so small, so raw they cut through him. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Her breathing steadied after that. Her fever eased toward dawn. And when the sun finally rose behind the snowy ridge, pale gold stretching over the land, Daniel realized something he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. He did not want her to leave. Not yet. Not until she remembered her name. Not until he understood why he had felt pulled into that storm in the first place. Something had started between them. A quiet thread. A spark in the cold. Something he could not name yet. Something she might already feel, too. The snow began to melt over the next 2 weeks, slow at first, then faster as the days grew brighter. Water dripped steady from the eaves, and patches of brown earth appeared through the thinning white. Winter was losing its hold. Inside the cabin, something else was thawing, too. She moved easier now. Her steps were steadier. Her color returned. She no longer slept with her hands clenched tight, no longer woke twisting in fear. She helped Daniel with small chores, sweeping the floor, peeling potatoes, brushing down the horses. Her hands were gentle with the animals, as if she'd known horses all her life. Still, she remembered nothing more of her past. One morning, while Daniel tightened the cinch on Iron's saddle, she stepped out into the yard with the morning sun touching her hair. Something feels familiar, she said quietly. Not a place, more like a feeling. Daniel rested his hand on the saddle horn. Good familiar or bad? Quote. She thought about it. Good, she said. Like I've been waiting for something without knowing it. He nodded, but his throat tightened. He didn't want to influence her, didn't want to hope for something that wasn't his to hope for. That afternoon, she rode with him along the fence line. She sat the saddle like someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Her back straight, her hands steady. When Iron shied at a rabbit darting across the trail, she calmed him with a soft hum. Daniel watched her. Something inside him warmed, something gentle and hard to name. She caught him looking and gave a small smile. He looked away, but his heart felt the smile long after. The next day changed everything. Daniel was in the barn stacking bales when he heard her call his name. Not scared, not hurt, just steady and urgent. He stepped out into the sunlight and saw her standing near the woodpile, a small leather pouch in her hands. I found this, she said. It was buried in the lining of the coat you took off me that first night. Daniel took the pouch from her. Inside was a folded paper, old, soft from being handled often. When he opened it, the writing inside made his chest tighten. It was a note. A short one. Just 6 words. If you find her, keep her safe. There was no name, no explanation, nothing else. He looked at her. She looked pale. Do you recognize it? He asked. She shook her head slowly. No, but my hands feel like they've held that pouch before. Daniel folded the paper and handed it back. You don't have to remember everything today, or tomorrow. Her fingers closed around the pouch. But someone wrote this for me, she whispered. Someone cared. Daniel nodded. Yes, someone did. That evening, she sat by the fire, turning the pouch over and over in her hands. Daniel cooked stew and pretended not to watch her. But he noticed the way she kept staring into the flames like searching for something hidden inside them. When he finally sat down across from her, she spoke before he could. I'm scared to remember. He leaned back slightly. Why? Because what if the life I had before, what if it wasn't something I want to go back to? She met his eyes. What if I was running from something? Daniel's breath caught. He chose his words carefully. Then you're safe from it now. Her voice turned softer. And what if I was leaving something good behind? Something important? Daniel's heart twisted. He didn't answer. She looked down at the pouch again. I feel torn, she said. Like my past is calling, but so is something here. He swallowed hard. And what do you want? She looked up. Their eyes met. The fire crackled. Outside, the last of the snow slid softly from the roof. I want to know who I am, she whispered. But I don't want to lose who I'm becoming. Daniel didn't move, didn't breathe. Her words struck him deep. That night she didn't close her bedroom door. The small crack of light between their rooms felt like a bridge she had opened on purpose. 2 days later, everything came to a point. A rider approached near sunset, his horse lathered, his coat dusty from long travel. Daniel stepped out with his rifle in hand, cautious but not hostile. The rider slowed near the porch and tipped his hat. I'm looking for a woman, he said. Brown hair, mid-20s, might be hurt, might be confused. He swallowed hard. Her name is Claire. Daniel's heart thudded. Claire. He turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, her face drained of color, her breath caught in her chest. The rider's eyes softened when he saw her. Claire, he said gently, thank God. She did not move, her hands trembled at her sides. Daniel lowered the rifle. The world felt too quiet. The man stepped forward. It's me, he said softly. Luke, your brother. Her lips parted. A tear slipped down her cheek. Luke, she whispered, like the name was both a memory and a wound returning at the same time. The man slid off his horse, and she walked toward him with slow, uncertain steps. He didn't rush her. When she reached him, he simply opened his arms, and she fell into them like she had been falling for months. Daniel looked away, jaw tight. Inside the cabin later, Claire, her name finally whole, held a cup of tea between trembling hands. Luke sat across from her, explaining in calm, careful words. You went missing 3 weeks ago, he said. We think someone followed you. We think you ran. We've been searching every day. Claire listened, her face pale but steady. Daniel stayed near the wall, silent but close. Do you remember anything? Luke asked. Claire shook her head. Not everything. Some pieces. But, she glanced at Daniel, her eyes softened. I remember feeling safe here. Luke looked between them, understanding slowly crossing his face. He sighed. We should head home soon, when you're ready. Claire took a long breath, then another. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the ranch. The barn, the corral, the fence line she had ridden, the place where she learned to breathe again. Finally she spoke. I'll go home, she said, but I want to come back. Daniel felt his breath leave him. Luke nodded. Then that's what you'll do. That night, as the moon rose over the melting fields, Claire stepped onto the porch where Daniel stood alone. I didn't remember my name, she said softly. I didn't remember my life, but I remembered how it felt here. Daniel looked at her, the firelight from inside warming her face. And how did it feel? He asked. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his. It felt like something beginning. He exhaled slowly. A warmth spread through him, gentle and deep. When you're ready, he said quietly, this place will be here. Quote. Her fingers curled around his. And so will you? She whispered. Daniel met her eyes. Yes, I will. The next morning she rode out with her brother, but she looked back at the ridge one last time. Daniel watched from the porch, hat in hand, feeling something steady rise in his chest. For the first time since Emily died, the world did not feel empty. And somewhere down the trail, Claire carried not just her past, but the start of something new, something that would lead her back. Because some hearts, once thawed, never freeze again.